So this will work automatically. Okay, sorry. Is it now live? Or? Yeah, you can just start it live. Okay, so from now. Okay, so apparently there was no live streaming, so I have to repeat. Okay, so I was supposed to talk about blockchain regulations and what happened this year. But as I say, my opinion is that we don't have much progress. Of course, if you want to know more, then you can look in the current cases that are happening, and what was relevant probably even at the end of last year was Ripple case. And if you scrutinize deeply into it and read what SEC wrote and what are the main characteristics, why did they actually want to take down the project, then you basically are getting the framework what SEC wants projects to do. And this is what I'm mostly, when I'm advising projects, like what is relevant, regardless of jurisdiction where you are incorporated. SEC has overview of everything, and it's practically impossible to do something without taking care of the potential legal implications. Also, one of the idea was that I prepare something, because this year is all about NFTs and DeFi. But I wanted, I don't know how many people is still here, because it's so nice in Paris and you could definitely spend more time out, to make more like AMA. And what are projects currently interested, what are the legal troubleshooting. So I'm offering some kind of half an hour while I'm here. If you have any kind of question, we can discuss, and maybe I can tell what is my view on the things that might help you and what to think about. Yeah, we have number one.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, my question is, we have seen Binance basically being forced out of UK. We have seen Hong Kong regulators stopping the, was it Binance again, from trading from trading tokenized stocks. So I'm just curious, what's your opinion? These are all common law jurisdictions. Is there maybe some advantage to France or Germany? Should these projects maybe look to continental Europe for maybe a better regulatory regime?
Well, I would say that it's not just distinction between common law and traditional, what we have here more in Europe, but it's specifically with jurisdictions. So what Binance is facing, that they're practically going into compliance analysis and what kind of licensing they're supposed to have. And I'm sure they have army of lawyers which are struggling to get this licensing done, and especially for exchanges, it's might even easier because they can easily describe what they're doing, right, compared to DeFi projects. So it's just a matter of some level of compliance that is expected. And what we know that FATF published this year, and I think guidelines are still under public consultation for all of us, especially industry should participate, in my opinion, even more, to contribute to like what do we think, like that should be regulated to what extent, because what they are discussing already now is that even software developers could fall under the definition of virtual asset service providers, which would affect many projects definitely in a negative way. So I'm not worried about crypto exchanges that they are more into AML compliance now with the travel rule and proof of ownership of the wallet, which is still not being solved, especially there is no standard that is being accepted in any jurisdiction. In Switzerland, I know that we are definitely far out with guidelines that all the brokerages and financial intermediaries have to implement, and what are seen as the weaknesses in AML processes. And there is no like global unique position, so this is what has to go with each jurisdiction, that you have to get the license. I don't know if this answers your question. In my opinion, there is no like easy answer like that. What jurisdictions should projects target? Like depends what you want to do, but still you have to be aware that all the projects in crypto are targeting global audience. So that means that where your potential clients or customers, however you call them, is where potential legal implications can come. So, and that would mean that you always have to seek advice in every jurisdiction. Of course, where you are incorporated, this brings additional questions. But wherever you have people that are participating in any way that, even though they consider themselves decentralized, I think it's not so easy to achieve actually decentralization.
I have another question. Here, on your left.
Yeah. Okay.
Following up on the Facebook stablecoin proposal and the MiCA regulation, my question would be, what's your take on the regulation, the latest one, and what you would do if you had the opportunity to talk to the regulators, the European Central Bank, for example, or the Commission. We also have the representatives of EUTSI, so the European Crypto Initiative here. They might actually ask even more specific question, but my question to you would really be just, what's your take on the latest MiCA draft? And what are we supposed to do in European Union to actually prevent from shit going down?
Well, I would say that it's very similar to FAT current position, and the difference between virtual asset service provider and crypto asset service provider, both of definitions are pretty broad. So from what I read in MiCA is that whatever actually you're doing with crypto, even any kind of marketing and promotion could potentially bring that you have to be licensed, which I would say that most of the projects would disagree that this should be regulated in the same way as if you're dealing in any financial transactions. I know that there is a lot of activity, and that on national levels a lot of think tanks have delivered to EU their opinions. So I hope it will be accepted, so that especially what will affect DeFi sector. But again, things are so complex that it's also important to understand that explaining to governmental authorities the technical details and how this implies if it's regulated in a certain way definitely needs more collaboration between the sector and authorities. So what will be the outcome of MiCA? Probably the draft that is currently on the table will be much different, but at the end I'm afraid that they will not back too much from AML compliance, and what they're seeing on layer 2, a lot of anonymous transactions is what might bring more pressure and surveillance on DeFi projects. At least this is my view.
Hi. Just want to ask a question about the Switzerland framework, specifically VASPs, and how this could affect DeFi protocols.
You mean under Swiss jurisdiction?
Exactly, so the VASPs.
Yeah, I mean nothing is specifically detailed under Swiss law. So it's what Switzerland also has to implement once the FAT guidelines will be approved. Then we will see if Swiss government will bring some additional clarification on VASP, but currently we don't have any defined terminology on VASP.
Okay, the next question then. So for a company that's registered within Switzerland to remain legal, what would you advise not to do and to do? So is there any no-goes for a company registered in Switzerland?
Well, what we are doing, my practice so far was from the beginning to be in dialogue with FINMA. So you describe what your project is doing and trying to achieve, even though some things are in future as some kind of future features of the network or protocol. And we can see also what FINMA is recently doing, that they're definitely having more technical expertise, and it's much harder to get a no action letter and tokens to be seen as a utility, especially for governance token. So what I was actually very surprised that a few projects were recently qualified as securities due to a feature of token to be able that you have governance voting within the project. So, I mean, it's about explanation, and every new idea, of course, brings a new light when you are approaching FINMA and when you're trying to explain. But, of course, they have certain framework which they are trying. What they're doing is they're trying to use existing framework to put it on your project, not the opposite. So it's about putting a lot of effort in this dialogue and trying to explain, because every details matters, and what projects might be facing that they are not sure what they're doing, what they're trying to develop, being more clear and having like your project like that everything is understood, because then it's easier to explain what is actually happening. But FINMA is definitely very open for dialogue compared to other jurisdictions.
This isn't working. Yeah, there is one thing, like protocol fees. So no protocol should take a fee if you're based within Switzerland, and any DeFi protocol. You come under VASP. It was stuff like that. Yep.
So then, do you think that DeFi protocols will all have to do AML KYC? Is that what the regulators want?
If you can achieve decentralization in a way that there is no door to knock on, then it's much harder for regulators to take down. But of course, if you are creating entity and entity is deploying software and any kind of liquidity pools, so it's hard to get rid of this tie. And if something calls upon liability, of course, they can always come to entity and ask. And some kind of proof of level of decentralization is something that we cannot say that exists in the current practice, so that, okay, like maybe comparable to other projects, and maybe from the standpoint of SEC, we can think like, okay, in what direction should project go, and how many tokens should entity still possess to be able to be seen as more decentralized. So this is some kind of argument that you can definitely always use in favor if you can prove that you have certain levels, so that if something is going on, so software is being deployed, protocol is living its own life, if authorities send some kind of motions or cease and desist letters, so that you have ability to defend that we as an entity have no control over the protocol, we have no control over the deployment of capital into liquidity pools. So, and then if, for instance, SEC issues that you have to, as an entity which deploy this software, to put AML compliance on the protocol, and if the protocol has a governance option, you can put it for a vote, and if community votes against it, then I don't know what kind of acts could happen upon that. We didn't have such actions happening from projects so far. I think we are still behind that, so that we are facing some regulatory actions on that side. But this would be something that you can say, okay, we, as a, for instance, foundation, we put a proposal that the protocol implements AML, and the community voted against it. So what can we do? So we satisfied what was put as an action towards us, but with the decentralization, we are actually fighting against it. So would it pass? Of course, it's hard to tell. Depends on the also amount of capital, as we see. All the projects that faced so far the biggest legal issue, like Telegram or Ripple, those were like multi-billion-dollar projects. So I believe that you cannot come so easily under their magnifier if the amounts are not so significant.
Hello. You're back.
Oh, sorry.
Hi. Okay. So I was wondering, since there's recently been a lot of headlines about China banning crypto and also getting rid of mining completely from the country, maybe FUD, maybe not, but it's been quite a repeated theme for several years in crypto. So I was wondering, what is your take on China saying that they have completely banned cryptocurrency? If you think that's really possible, and what do you think the implications of that are?
Well, it's definitely in crypto industry a significant market which guides every move that is happening. But I mean, we are listening this from the beginning, so it's been more than a decade. There is always some legal issues coming from China, but I think anyone who is in the industry will find a way around it. So not necessarily that they have to be positioned in China.
Hello. So I'm working with the French Crypto Assets Association and also on European initiative on crypto. And what we've seen during the exchange we had with the EU regulator and the French regulator too, is that the extension, the overreach that the FATF wants on, KYC AML seems to be like something ineluctable in principle, because they really see the lack of coverage of DeFi as really like a black hole for potential bad actors. But what we've been thinking about recently, and I don't know how Switzerland is treating this, is there a way where you could really adjust the KYC AML measures, not say that you are outside of the scope, but say DeFi is different, the responsibilities are different, and you are not in control as much as you are when you are developing a centralized entity, of course. So you should probably create something that would be really specific to DeFi. That's maybe something more like a surveillance, reporting obligations of things that could happen, rather than controlling beforehand the identity, things that are really not feasible with a really decentralized model. Is it something that rings something? Does this make sense for you, or is there something?
I didn't see any progress. I know there are certain projects that are working on more DKYC type. I know also in France, right? But still, this has to be, if you are negotiating with authorities, has to be recognized as a standard, because each of us could come and say, I have some type of decentralized solution. There is, we collected data, deployed it on blockchain. It's like certain QR code connected to Ledger or however, but if it's not recognized, then I don't think that it would be accepted, right? Until we start using it as certain standard, and that you work as a project who is developing this, and then you have a product which you can communicate with different protocols if it can be implemented. But this, again, it brings what I said earlier, the topic of decentralization, like who is supposed to organize compliance? Like if it's decentralized project, who wants to take this role? Because if you're the one who will raise your hand, then it brings, of course, potential liability for you. So this is, something that it's completely new legal angle which didn't exist before. We were in a world of entities, now entering into a world of decentralized organizations, which still have some main roles and characters that can always be pinned. You know, you are behind this, you were the CEO of this company, or, I mean, people are doing whatever they do with their marketing to leave traces, so it's not a problem to find who is behind a project. But it will be some kind of balance. Will we find in nearly future a solution to satisfy the governmental authorities with some different type of compliance? I think it definitely has to be user-friendly solution which will be well accepted, you know, some front ends that governments can understand that what is behind it. Like, did we have, you know, some kind of a deployment on the blockchain? It's then again question of GDPR, immutability of data. What if data that was deployed is inaccurate? So it's like a lot of different angles that actually have to be taken into consideration when we are talking about new standard of KYC, because currently with banking, of course, we know it's like ID, proof of address, very simple. So now, let's see actually from ideas that are on the table, what can represent something that will be adequate in a world where we know that they're already going into KYT, know your transaction, that practically we have to provide the knowledge of the ownership of the wallet. So actually we are pressed with more compliance that existed before, right? So to wrap this up, I think it's a lot of pressure on the community and industry to find a solution where we will not have more surveillance than we actually want. A lot of chains don't even have ability to be traced. Of course, government is working with Chainalysis and similar companies, but they don't have capacity for all the tokens and everything what exists on the market. So we will see. I mean, for projects, what I see as additional issues like being listed on exchanges is now also bringing the topic, is token compatible with AML compliance, or if not, we cannot list it. So all this is potential problem, because then if you're listed, if you were actively being involved there, then you have issue with SEC. So being seen as active participant, promoting, like increasing the value of your token potentially by being listed on the... So all these things are different topics which, when you're doing legal analysis, have to be considered and do the right moves, not to end up in more problems.
Hi. What's the legal consequences of hosting a front end for a DeFi application in comparison to IPFAS, Arweave, IC, etc.?
Well, just the fact that you have a web page, and even though you're trying to make the ownership anonymous, of course, with the MPD request, it can be found out, so who is the person who actually paid for the web page. So if the activity is considered that is promoting some kind of illegal action, then of course it leads to the ownership of the web page. At least in my opinion, this is the first thing what I'm always, when I'm talking to projects like, so who is behind the web page? This is, you know, step one, like, oh yeah, I bought it with my credit card, so yes, so it will stay your name, and things like that. So you cannot have this kind of information. It's not easy to stay completely anonymous.
But is there any legal consequences for hosting a front end?
Well, depends on, I would say this would be case by case, depends what's going on. So it's not that necessarily has to lead to liability of the software developer of the web page.
Thank you. So if I can help and provide a clue to answer this question, we've been discussing with our lawyer, we are in France, and then our lawyer said that as soon as we advertise something, we have some responsibilities. So if you advertise some DeFi mechanism, thanks to your webpage, in France at least, you have some responsibility, and your responsibility stops at the decentralized mechanism. This is where we are. 5 minutes. Yeah, this is not very clear, in fact, because if some problem arises, so there will be, of course, a huge discussion of where are the responsibility of each people working in this process. I mean.
Okay, if all clear, I'll do my best to prepare this topic, which is supposed to be today, top 40 legal issues of NFT, and we will send video to everyone who attended ECC. As NEAR Foundation, we are trying to educate community, not just for the sole purpose of development of NEAR protocol, but I think we are all here to learn and to do our best to think about compliance, but still not at the price of technical development. If no other questions, then thank you. And yeah.
Thanks, Sonja, for this really cool AMA session. We'll start